putting together a sourdough rye today. This is one of my favorite ryes, and it's about the simplest rye. It just has a white rye, flour, white bread flour, a starter, water, salt, and caraway seeds. Method I use is really straightforward for this bread. I actually mix everything together, go through a quick autolyse phase, then go through a kneading phase, bulk fermentation, shaping, baking. Again, just couldn't be any easier for a sourdough. So let's get started. I've already placed 95 grams of white rye flour as well as 290 grams of bread flour in the bowl. I'm going to mix those two together. This is not 100% necessary, but I, just for the aesthetic, like to mix everything together in the bowl before I go on to the next step. And although your grandmother may be shuddering, I actually just take the 14 grams of caraway seeds and 10.5 grams of salt. Just add it in, and then I mix that together as well. We're just going to continue to mix that together for a few minutes just to get things thoroughly mixed. Next I add 172 grams of water. Just kind of stir that around a little bit to start to get the water absorbed. There we go. That'll work. Now the fun part. This is 360 grams of 100% hydrated starter. You can see that the starter is just starting to come off the sides. It's been fermenting for about 6 hours right now, and you can see that it is very active indeed. 360 grams may seem like an awful lot of starter for this size of a loaf, but I find that with this rye, it really helps to have quite a bit of yeast in it. It helps with the bulk fermentation. Let's just add this in here. Just get all that out of there. All right, take our scraper and just scrape the rest of that off. All right, that works. Let's set that down. All right, I use a bowl scraper for mixing. You can use just about whatever you'd like. You can use a silicone spatula. Some people like to use a wooden spoon. I've had friends of mine like to use wooden spoon handles. Why? It seems to work for them. But anyway, this is my method. This is how I do it. I just do it because it works for me. But I go around the sides and pull the dry dough into the middle where I've got all of the liquid from the water we added as well as the starter. Let's move that away. So this will take about a minute to come together, and we know we're done when we've just got no loose flour at the bottom, and the dough's a bit of a shaggy mess. You can see after even 30 seconds it's really coming together pretty well. There we go. All right, good deal. No loose flour, kind of shaggy. So we're just going to scrape our bowl scraper off. Don't lose anything. I cover my dough with a wet cloth. Some people use plastic, some people use dry cloth, some people use all sorts of things. Shower caps. I find this, I've got 1,000 of these things laying around the house. This is just easy for me. Just cover it up. We're going to go through 1 hour auto lease. So we're just going to set our timer for 1 hour, get that started, and we'll let that rest now for an hour and get cleaned up and get ready for our next step. All right, it's been sitting for an hour. And you can see it's still kind of wet on top, not real evenly hydrated yet. That's going to change in about 35 seconds. So I'm just going to move the dough with our dough scraper again. Excuse me, with our bowl scraper. That's looking really good. Okay, let's move that over there. Let's just put a little bit of bench flour on, just a little bit. We're not putting more than a few grams on, just kind of making sure things don't stick too badly. Again, this is not a real high hydration loaf, but it will remain tacky through. Let's get some flour on our fingers. Let's start to pull this together. Now, right now, if I started to try to just knead this, it's still pretty wet, and there's virtually no real gluten development, so it kind of falls apart. So we got to get this kind of started. So if you sit in a situation where you've got, wetter than you can really handle with a normal kneading. I use a technique I learned, which I'll put in the notes below, to work with these really wet doughs, like when they're in this situation. It works pretty well. It's basically, it's kind of a variation on stretch and fold. Kind of fold over, rotate it 90 degrees to try to keep moving the inside on top of itself. It creates a surface. It's not real fast, although if you do watch the video, you see the lady that does it can do it really fast. But this will come together pretty darn quick. Right now, you see I'm still the dough on my fingers. If I try to just knead this using the palms of my hands, it'd be just a sticky, gooey mess. So we're going to try this, get things started this way. Again, I'm trying to keep the extra flour to a bare minimum. With a lot of new bakers especially, there's a tendency to want to keep adding flour until you get the consistency you think you want. That works. It'll get you a dry loaf, but it'll also get you an incredibly dense loaf, which is not what you really want at the end of the day. Okay, so that's coming together now. So I can actually roll this up. Still pretty sticky, but it is looking good. So it's still pretty tacky. But let's get our timer. Let's get our timer started and let's just start some serious kneading. Yeah, and how long this is going to take is going to depend on how fast you knead. I'm a relatively slow kneader, so I suspect this is going to take me anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes to get done. But we're going to get started here. And oh my God, yeah, this looks nice. We'll get started, and then we'll stop at 4 minutes and see how we're doing. Stop again, probably 8 minutes, and see how we're doing. All right, we're 4 minutes in. So we're just going to, again, get flour on the fingertips here. Let's just see how we're doing. We're just going to do a informal window pane test. It's looking good. If I keep on stretching though, you're going to see it's going to tear. Probably right there it goes. Not quite where I want it, but you see a lot of really good gluten development so far. Let's give it about 4 minutes or so. And actually what I'm doing is I'm feeling how the dough's coming together. It's kind of hard to describe. It sort of gets softer and softer as you knead. Okay, we're about 8 minutes in there, so yeah, it's feeling pretty nice. So again, a little bit of flour on the fingertips. Still kind of tacky. Let's just start stretching out a little bit, see how it's doing. Oh, see, this is doing much better. There, yeah, just barely starting to tear. This is really good shape. Give it another minute, just for good luck. And watch with this. See, I'm just kind of pulling the top tight. I can just kind of roll this into a ball. Just kind of tucking using the tips of my fingers, kind of tuck underneath as I roll it. And that, my friend, is what you're looking for. That is really good. Again, this is still tacky. This is not a dry dough. If I take my fingers and go like that, it's going to stick to it. So again, don't be afraid of tacky. Tacky dough is your friend. All right, so I'm going to take a 3 liter bulk fermentation container. It's an old food container of mine. I use a little just straight olive oil to spray inside for good luck more than anything else, I think. Put that down, put the top on. I put a rubber band around the middle, right about where the dough's starting. And give me an idea about where it has to go. I'm looking to eventually double the volume during the bulk fermentation process. But the first step is I'm going to let this ferment for about an hour, and then we're going to do a business letter fold on it, add a little bit more strength to the dough, and then we're going to wrap up the bulk fermentation. So let's stop this, clear it, set it for an hour, get started back up again. See you back shortly. It's been an hour. So we're at basically nowhere after an hour. See, it's still essentially at the same place it was before, but watch this. Reaching in here, this is just like silly putty. It's just really pretty remarkable. So we're going to do a business letter fold on this. You don't even have to put anything on the counter at all. It will not stick. In fact, it will spread out incredibly easily. Anyway, we're just going to spread out into a big rectangle. Fold it about 3/4 over, or 2/3 over. Fold that on top of there. Turn that 90 degrees. Stretch that a little bit. Do the same thing. come back over into the inside. Kind of now just what we did before, just roll this thing into a ball. You can see what I'm doing is just tucking underneath with my fingers, kind of using them as a shovel, just kind of moving this around and making a little ball out of it. You can just feel how taut that is now. So now we're going to put it back in here. Top back on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to let it sit until it doubles in volume. So right now it's what, about 3.5 centimeters or so. So we're looking to try to get it up to here before we're done. Okay, right now we're about at 3 hours. We're at double volume, give or take. Yeah, that's what, 4 centimeters. That's about 4 centimeters. We're looking good. So we just kind of dump it out onto the counter. Get rid of some of the bubbles there. I'm just going to kind of pull the edges in and just form just a loose ball. Again, this is just the pre-form, so we're not trying to get too much tension on the top, just enough to there we go. So let's just set that over there. I just take, again, a wet towel, just cover it up. Doesn't dry out. And we're going to set our timer to 10 minutes and let that go. We're going to prepare a broth form. My broth forms are all well used. Just to kind of take some loose stuff out from the last time we used this. And then I just take a little white rice flour, just kind of sprinkle a little bit in there, and then just sort of, again, rub it into the edges. Again, it's broth forms, you never clean them. They just, at worst, get a little bit of dry dough on the inside, and as you can see, you just kind of scrape it out with your fingers. It's all done, kind of looks like that. So we're going to let the rest of our 10 minutes go by, and then we're going to shape it, put it in the broth form, and then we're going to put it in the refrigerator for overnight. Okay, we're about 10 minutes in. So let's just uncover this. We're going to do the final shaping. So we've got a round broth form. We're just going to shape this right back into another ball. We're going to make sure we're going to get good tension on the surface. Again, this is not a high hydration loaf. It started off at about 63%. So I just work right on the work surface itself with nothing additional on it. After I roll it up, I will put some flour on my fingers to make sure they don't stick. But again, just pulling up the edges like we did before, and now paying more attention to getting this a lot tighter than we did the last time. Kind of pinching in the middle, doing a little bit of a cross stitch here, you can see. Really helps pull the tension on the bottom. Turn back over to the top. Now we're just going to start turning and folding under with fingers like this. Going to pull towards us and turn, pull, turn, pull and turn. And while we're doing this, we're kind of folding underneath, so you can see the tension forming on the top. This is getting really tight. Once we got it like that, we're just going to take a little bread flour, sprinkle a little bread flour on top. Take our broth form, flour on our fingers to make sure it doesn't stick. And kind of use them as paddles. Get underneath, flip it upside down. And then a little bit more flour on the top. And this is my personal preference. People do things a little bit differently. But this method seems to work pretty well for me. And then the next, again, since I'm going to do an overnight proofing, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap. Just kind of simply like that. Again, doesn't have to be fancy. Then just take a plate and just kind of put a plate right over the top of it. Just sort of keeps the plastic down against the edge of the broad form. This is now going to go in my refrigerator. It's about 37 degrees Fahrenheit in the refrigerator overnight. It's currently 9:15 p.m. I'm going to bake tomorrow morning at about 6. So it will have, anywhere from 11 to 12 hours on it before I get around to baking it. But let's just put it in the fridge and we'll get back to it tomorrow morning. Before we go get the dough out of the refrigerator, let's talk a little bit about how we have the oven set up today. I've actually got both of my ovens on, preheated to 450 degrees for the past hour. Top oven, I'm going to do sort of using the traditional method. I've got a baking stone with about a 9-inch cast iron pan that I use for a steam pan. And then down here in the lower oven, I've got a baking cloche that I've got preheated to 450 degrees as well. So let's go get the dough out of the refrigerator and get going with this bake. Dough's been in the refrigerator at around 3 or 4 degrees Celsius for the past roughly 10 hours. So let's have a look to see how it's doing. It's puffed up nicely, as we would expect. Take the plastic off. And now we're just going to loosen it from the sides to make sure it doesn't stick. This is a relatively low hydration loaf, so the probability of it sticking is pretty low. Got a simple baking peel here. On top of the peel, I've put a piece of parchment paper that I've cut to be approximately the size of the dough, or just a little bit bigger. I use parchment paper instead of cornmeal. Makes far less of a mess in my oven. So let's get the dough onto the peel. Just going to kind of go around the sides just to make sure it didn't stick, which you can see it didn't. Now I'm just going to carefully turn this out into the middle of the peel. And I use a lamb to score the top. You can use a serrated knife or anything else that you got that's really, really sharp. And I put a pattern on the top. You can put whatever pattern you want. You just need to have cuts in the top of the bread in order to provide a means for the expansion to occur where you want them to occur rather than to just be random. And again, you can do this just about any way you want. I find this works pretty darn slick. All right, let's move it over to the oven. All right, let's get the oven open. I'm going to slide the bread in here on the side. So just slides nicely right off there. And we'll take our steam pan, pour the push this back in, and we're just going to set our timer to 20 minutes initially. And we're back. That obnoxious sound can only mean one thing. It's been 20 minutes. So let's open the oven up, see how we're doing. Okay, so let's see what this is doing. Let's get the steam pan out of here. All right, let's move this to the center. Good. And we'll wait that for about another 15 minutes. There we go. And be back in a few minutes. Let's see how we're doing here. Well, that looks really good. Let's check the, really quick, we're just going to check the interior temperature. And we're about 196 Fahrenheit or so. That's pretty good. So let's take it out. Let's see how we're doing. Got a cooling rack set up over here. This over here. Let's pull this out. Yeah, see a nice hollow sound to it. This is done. Get close enough, we may be able to hear it crackling a little bit. But overall, this looks pretty darn nice. All right, this is completely cooled. It smells great. It still feels really solid. So let's cut this open and see what it looks like. Ah, look at that crust. As I said, this is not a real open crumb. It's a rye bread, but boy, that looks really good. Hope you get a chance to check out this loaf. It really is delicious and certainly one of the best rye loaves I make. Happy baking. Bye-bye.